In the 1980s, Super Mario Bros. Was effectively the face of the NES and Nintendo in general. It was the definitive platforming game that players of all ages could enjoy. While the NES enjoyed other successes such as The Legend of Zelda, another series created by Shigeru Miyamoto, Capcom's Mega Man series, and Konami's Castlevania series, Super Mario Bros. Was among the biggest successes for the system. While not as successful as its predecessor, Super Mario Bros. 2 still managed to sell over 7 million copies. While very different from the first game, Super Mario Bros. 2 still received positive attention from media outlets for how unique it was. Regardless, when developing the next entry in this series, Nintendo decided to return to the format of the first Mario title, only improving it in every way possible. Thus, we have today's topic, Super Mario Bros. 3. But first, some history. Development for Super Mario Bros. 3 began shortly after the release of the Lost Levels in 1986. Apparently, during this game's early stages of development, the developers took inspiration from The Legend of Zelda and were going to develop the game with an overhead point of view. However, the team noted that this made it difficult to know when Mario was on the ground or in the air. As a result, this version of the game was scrapped and the team once again used the side view of the first two games. When developing the game, Takashi Tezuka stated that he wanted to make a game that was completely fresh and new rather than simply developing a harder version of the same title as he had done with the Lost Levels. And so, he and his team set to work on reworking everything, from Mario's controls and abilities to the character sprites and the environments. And like the games prior, Koji Kondo once again composed the soundtrack for Super Mario 3. Super Mario Bros. 3 launched in Japan in October of 1988 and would not see its release in North America until February of 1990, and Europe wouldn't receive the game until August of 1991. Apparently, one of the causes for these delays was a shortage of ROM chips in 1988, which delayed the release of several titles in North America. However, the delayed release of the game provided Nintendo with a unique opportunity to promote it. In 1989, Universal Studios released a movie titled The Wizard, a movie which heavily featured video games that were released on the NES. However, the biggest attraction of the film was the finale, which featured a gaming tournament called Video Armageddon, and the final game that was played at this tournament was Super Mario Bros. 3, which at the time had not been seen outside of Japan. 2 months after the release of the film, Super Mario Bros. 3 launched in North America to universal acclaim and is considered one of the greatest games of all time, and by some, the best Mario game of all time. The story of this game is that Bowser is once more invading the Mushroom World, this time invading several other kingdoms in the process with the aid of his 7 Koopalings, and Mario must once more foil Bowser's scheme. Mario does just this, but after freeing the 7th Kingdom Pipeland, Bowser abducts Princess Peach, who prior to this had actually not been kidnapped. Mario eventually defeats Bowser himself and rescues Princess Peach, thereby ending the game. Much like its predecessors, the story in this game is not complex, but it certainly feels a little more grand given that Bowser attempted to invade the entire Mushroom World, and not simply the part of the kingdom that Princess Peach rules over. Gameplay in Super Mario Bros. 3 is largely the same as its predecessors. The game is once more a side-scrolling platformer in which the player must guide Mario through the various enemies and obstacles that the game offers. In terms of control, Mario controls very similar to how he handled in the first game, though I believe his mid-air control is improved here, as he doesn't feel as stiff as he once did when attempting to influence his mid-air direction. Otherwise, Mario effectively plays the same as he had for the past 2 titles. One new addition to Mario's moveset is the ability to grab Koopa shells and carry them around by holding B. Then, when you're ready, releasing B will kick the shell in that direction and will instantly eliminate most threats. The game once again features classic power-ups such as the Super Mushroom, Fire Flower, and Starman, all of which function as they did before. However, the game does feature an assortment of new power-ups as well. First is the Super Leaf, which transforms Mario into Raccoon Mario. By building up the power meter at the bottom of the screen and then jumping, Mario gains the ability to fly for a short period of time. By pressing B while in this form, Mario can also tail swipe an enemy, but I find it somewhat unreliable at times because of how close you need to be to an enemy, which can cause you to get hit in the process. P-Wings grant Mario the same ability, however this allows Mario to fly infinitely for one stage or until he takes damage, effectively allowing you to completely bypass any and all obstacles in that level. The Tanuki suit grants Mario the same abilities as Raccoon Mario, but with the addition of being able to transform into a statue by pressing down and B, which makes Mario temporarily invincible. The Frog suit allows Mario to swim faster and grants better maneuverability in water, however on land it's much slower, but it does allow Mario to jump a bit higher than he can on his own. The incredibly rare Hammer Bros suit allows Mario to toss 2 hammers at a time in an arc, much like actual Hammer Bros. However, unlike the Fire Flower, which can only defeat enemies not immune to it, the Hammer Bros suit can eliminate just about every type of enemy in the game, even boos and thwomps. Clouds allow you to outright skip a level on the world map, music boxes put wandering Hammer Bros on the map to sleep, and hammers allow you to break blocks on the map to open up shortcuts or to discover hidden areas. A very rare item is the Warp Whistle, which allows you to skip entire worlds, and with enough of them you can head straight to the final world, Darkland. That is certainly a lot of items for Mario to make use of. However, items are no longer restricted to simply being found in stages and having to use them immediately. In certain situations, you can actually obtain an item from a chest. By pressing B on the world map, you can view your current inventory of items. Then, by highlighting an item and pressing A, you're able to use that item immediately. I really like this feature as it allows you to assess your current situation and select an item to better prepare yourself. In fact, this feature would later return in the new Super Mario Bros. Games years later. 2-player mode makes its return here, with Luigi once more being controlled by player 2 and once more becoming a green recolor of Mario. However, 2-player mode does work a bit differently this time around. In the original Super Mario Bros., if you selected 2-player mode, a player would continue playing until they lost a life. And players also didn't share world progression, so if player 1 made it to world 3 before losing a life, player 2 would still have to play through the other levels that player 1 had already finished. Here, players have to work together to finish the game as they are both in the same world at the same time. And after each level, players alternate as well, so one player no longer has to wait for a potentially long time in order to play. There's also this minigame players can enter based on the Mario Bros. Arcade game. Here, the idea is to either take away the other player's cards or to cost them their turn. Speaking of cards, you are rewarded with one after you complete a stage. Simply gathering 3 of them will grant you a 1-up. However, should you match 3 cards, you can obtain even more 1-ups, with 3 star cards granting you 5 lives. In this game, there are 8 worlds for you to explore, each with their own themes and challenges. Grassland is the standard World 1. It's a very effective starting world that is fairly easy and gets you prepared for what's ahead. Desertland, much like Grassland, is still fairly easy, but introduces breakable rocks and warp pipes to maneuver around the map a bit easier. Waterland, true to its name, features a lot of water-based stages, so it's here that you'll find the most use for the frog suit. Giant Land features enemies and environments that are much larger than usual, which actually makes it much easier to defeat enemies here because of how big they are. Skyland is actually divided into 2 sections. You start off on the ground where levels are fairly standard, but upon finishing this tower level you are transported to the second half in the sky. Here, levels become far more platform heavy and are actually quite challenging. Iceland features icy environments and ice physics, which can lead to some unfortunate falls if you aren't careful enough, and Pipeland features levels that are a bit more puzzle heavy compared to others, but overall it's nothing too difficult. And finally, Darkland starts off as a gauntlet of airship type levels and later features more traditional levels that are among some of the more difficult stages in the game. At the end of Worlds 1 through 7, you'll encounter an airship stage, which can range from easy to a bit frustrating, but overall aren't too bad. And at the end of each of these stages, you'll encounter a Koopaling. Larry Koopa, Morton Koopa Jr., Wendy O. Koopa, Iggy Koopa, Roy Koopa, Lemmy Koopa, and Ludwig von Koopa. Each of them is defeated in the same way by jumping on their head 3 times, but some of them have unique attacks that can make the encounter more challenging. For instance, Wendy throws these rings at you that can be quite difficult to avoid, and to me, this actually makes her one of the hardest Koopalings to defeat. Larry throws bouncing balls everywhere, and Roy and Ludwig both have a ground pound attack that will stun you if you are on the ground when they land, opening you up for a free hit. And finally, at the end of Darkland, you encounter Bowser himself, who doesn't throw hammers this time, but he's much more aggressive with his fire attacks and now tries to ground pound you. And the only ways to defeat him are to use the Fire Flower once again, or to wait until he sends himself through the floor. When comparing difficulty to past games in this series, I find that Mario 3 is more challenging than the first game, but less challenging than the second game. And much like the first game, I find that the levels naturally become more difficult as you progress, unlike the more inconsistent challenge in the second game. It does get a bit crazy at points, but overall the game doesn't cause as much frustration as I believe Mario 2 can be capable of at times. Graphically, this game is a massive improvement over its predecessors. Everything here is more detailed, varied, and colorful than ever before. It's simply an amazing looking game for the NES. I'd say the only minor grievance I have is that Luigi is once again a recolor, but it's ultimately not a big deal. And the music in this game is fantastic. Each map has its own unique theme, which are all very memorable, and the stage music is top notch. And the airship theme is one of my favorite pieces of video game music, period. The only issue I have is that when there are too many sound effects going on at once, the music loses some instruments, which is a bit distracting. Much like the games before it, Super Mario Bros. 3 has been ported to and remade for various systems. Like Mario 2 USA, the two most substantial ports are the All-Stars remake and the GBA port Super Mario Advance 4. The All-Stars version is once more a 16-bit remake of the original NES version, and it looks and sounds fantastic. I especially love the underwater stages and the airship levels here because the water stages really make you feel like you're underwater, and the airship stages with the added dark clouds and lightning really add to the atmosphere. The GBA version uses the All-Stars version as the basis, but includes the changes and features found in the first Super Mario Advance, such as the Mario Bros. Arcade game and the voice samples for Mario and Luigi. This version actually opens up with a cutscene showing the Koopalings invading the Mushroom Kingdom and Peach enlisting the aid of the Mario Bros. To help put an end to Bowser's plot. This version comes with a save system, something that the All-Stars version also had, and includes two modes of play. Since multiplayer requires two Game Boys and a link cable, single-player mode offers Mario Game and Mario and Luigi Game. Choosing Mario just places you in control of Mario for the entire game just like usual. Selecting Mario and Luigi has the player switching back and forth between the two brothers after each stage. Because of this, both of them have their own life counters and their own inventory slots. And because of this, you could potentially have a total of around 80 or so items between both brothers, so you can really stockpile items in this version. The most noteworthy aspect though is that this version offers New Game Plus. After finishing the game, you can select whatever world you want to play again with all of your lives and items intact and essentially infinite mushroom houses, and all levels are replayable at all times. Super Mario Bros. 3 is the result of taking everything that worked about the games that came before it and improving them greatly. The controls are great, the level design is for the most part great, the music is excellent, and the new power-ups are really fun to play around with. While a bit more challenging than the first game, I do believe that Super Mario Bros. 3 is still new player friendly, and it never gets to the point where it feels as though the game is punishing you for failure. I'd say that the only aspect of the game that I dislike are the bosses, as some Koopalings are clearly more difficult than others and should have been placed in different worlds because of this. Besides that though, Super Mario Bros. 3 is an excellent game and one that I find well worth your time and money to play, regardless if it's on the NES, SNES, or GBA. Super Mario Bros. 3 does not disappoint. Mario's adventures on the NES end here, so when next we meet, we move into the 16-bit world with Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Until then, take care everyone.